What's up, guys? I wanted to do a slightly further discussion. Not, I shouldn't call it a discussion. I'm going to try to go through this quickly. I'm going to try. But people have brought up some good questions. I didn't really get into every detail of everything that I wanted to talk about. I usually do these videos on the fly. I don't really prepare much. I just kind of off the cuff. Uh, But I didn't even realize that the 42 and the 43 cars were also hit with penalties. They messed around with the rocker box, which I think is right behind the front wheel wells. I don't know what exactly they did, but they messed around with it and they got hit with penalties. So we've been talking about the inconsistent penalties, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about it. But before I get into that, I'm going to just take a quick look at this. So yeah, the rocker box assemblies, right? So L1 level penalties, right? So they got docked 35 owner and 35 driver points, right? Which is, in my opinion, the kind of the same thing when you look at the point standings. Uh, and the crew chiefs were ejected. Yeah, it's not even. I don't. Are they suspended or ejected? That's weird. I does this mean that they were ejected before the no? I don't know. This is kind of confusing, but let's just focus for now on the points because that's all we know for sure. 35 points. Again, in my opinion, that's a slap on the wrist. Uh, this really isn't much different from Gibbs. Uh, again, it's amazing to me how NASCAR is all over the place. This is why people are going to continue to have questions about NASCAR's credibility. Um, they think they're being precise with with these L1, L2, and because this was actually making a change to an approved NASCAR part, and this over here it's just some kind of adjustment. Like it's so much bullshit and jargon. It's confusing. The bottom line is nobody really knows what makes one infraction different from another. To me, that's a problem. Okay, so I didn't even know about this. So I mean, I'm shocked at how many people are actually getting busted cheating. I'm not really shocked at the cheating because these people are always going to try to find a way around the rules. But this is why I'm so tough on NASCAR because it's really all on NASCAR. And the fact is, the way that they're just choosing to divvy out penalties makes no sense. And it's why these teams continue to push the envelope. It's insane. Let me get to some of the. I did write down a few things. Some of the questions that you guys have brought up in the comments. I do try to answer people's questions. I do read all the comments. So I figured instead of just writing in the comment section, sometimes things get lost in translation. So let me take a quick look. The first thing, give slap on the wrist wasn't even a penalty. Now, I did talk about this yesterday, but there's something else that thinking about it and watching other people's reactions, I'm talking about other YouTubers and people on social media and their reaction to the penalty, right? Now, they all do seem to agree that the penalty is pretty light, and they do all seem to also agree that uh, it's pretty unclear what designates one penalty as being worse than another, right? So I think we're all in agreement, right, that there's some funny shit going on. But the other thing I noticed is a lot of these YouTubers and a lot of just really the media in general, everyone, right? I just honestly feel like I'm the only one that's going to see it this way. I'm not, I'm sure other people will probably agree, but the more I think about it, it's worse than a slap on the wrist because when you think about it, when I've thought about it, the main thing everyone talks about is how NASCAR took away the win and how that's such a huge penalty. And it's going to really, that's the thing that really gets people's attention. And then it's just struck me as, wait a minute, you're supposed to take the win away, first of all, which I'm glad they did. And when NASCAR announced, I think in 2019, that this was going to be a thing, they're no longer going to let people keep wins after getting busted cheating. That's a good thing. And I'm glad they're taking the win away. But is that really a penalty? And the more I think about it, that's not even a penalty because to me, that win was never yours to begin with. You stole it by cheating. You're not supposed to keep it. Think of it this way. Let's say you stole something from someone and the police show up, you're busted. You stole a watch or something. The police take the watch from you, take it away from you, and give it back to its rightful owner. And then tell you, okay, carry on, go home. You've been punished. Would that be something that makes sense to you? It doesn't make sense to me. And that's the way I view the win. That, in fact, that's the way I view the finish, right? So that goes for Kyle Busch as well. They got those two first and second place finishes by cheating. And even if you want to argue back and forth, I'll just say they got caught having broken the rules. All right? You gave back the positions and you gave back the win. And everyone's calling that a penalty. That's not a penalty. You took things that did not belong to you by cheating. You didn't deserve first place. You did not deserve second place because you got caught cheating. You don't deserve the trophy or the win. So you're not supposed to keep that. That's not a penalty. To me, a penalty is the cops come, take what you stole, give it back to its rightful owner, and then put you in handcuffs and take you to jail. That's the penalty. That's the punishment. Is there something wrong with me, my brain, the way I'm thinking, the logic? Am I off? You guys tell me because I don't count that as a penalty. That's supposed to happen. And I'm glad NASCAR is finally doing this stuff. It's amazing to me that we went this long or this much many years in history of NASCAR and letting people keep wins and then calling it unencumbered or whatever the fuck. That always was bizarre to me. But the point I'm making is, at what point were they really penalized? Because to me, you're not supposed to keep the win. This is why Hamlin rubs me the wrong way when he posts things like that he would like to switch spots with Michael McDowell and their penalties. He's full of shit. He's just trying to convince people that, hey, we got hit really hard, and don't pay too much attention because then you might see that we really weren't penalized much at all. We got a slap on the wrist. The sending them back to the rear of the field, yeah, they lost some points, but that's the equivalent of a DNF. That really is not a big deal, especially to Kyle Busch and Denny Hamlin. These guys are always in contention for top fives and wins. So a DNF is something they can just brush off and keep going. So where's nobody was suspended. They didn't even suspend someone. They just caught them having altered the car. And I know people are still trying to find ways to downplay a piece of tape, blah blah. Where's the suspensions? McDowell's losing crew chief for four races plus 100 points and a fine. So, or the crew chief got $100,000 fine, whatever. And then these guys, they just give up the spots and get sent to the back, and they lost those points. That's it. Where's the penalty? And it didn't really, I didn't, it didn't occur to me as I started seeing more and more people talk about how taking that win away was such a huge penalty. It just made me think. I'm like, why doesn't this feel right? And I thought about it and I'm like, wait a minute. That win wasn't his to keep. It didn't belong to you. You stole it. You're not supposed to keep it. Giving that stolen item back that's not the penalty. What happens to you after that, that's where the penalty comes. And other than getting sent to the back, that's it. So those are my last thoughts on it. You guys tell me if that makes sense to you. Am I crazy? I don't see that as a penalty. Yes, it sucks, right? You know, you don't get to keep the trophy and the win, but you didn't deserve it. You didn't earn it. You stole it. You're not supposed to keep it. Like I said, you steal something, the cops show up, they take the stolen item that you stole, and they give it back to the person you stole it from. And then they let you go. You're supposed to go to jail. Where's the penalty? Where is the punishment? So, yeah, NASCAR is doing this to themselves. And it looks like a clown show. So, someone else brought up, they said, what if these teams make a mistake, right? In reference to getting punished. Because sometimes people think, well, man, if you see the penalty McDowell got, or Brad Keselowski, and then you're like, man, what if these guys make an honest mistake and overlook something? Well, I'm not going to tell you that could never happen because these people are human. Anything can happen. But we're talking about multi-million-dollar race teams. Professionals at the highest level of NASCAR. And they view things in thousandths of an inch. Okay? That's how tight the tolerances are, and the things that they're used to dealing with are at a thousandth of an inch. At that level. Nobody's going to convince me that people mistakenly left a piece of tape in a certain spot. And if a mistake is made, like I said, I'm not going to tell you it's impossible. It's so rare that it's not worth coming up with this newfangled, confusing system of penalties. There is an appeal system, and if you really feel like a mistake was made, there is an appeal process. Now, good luck with that, because at the end of the day, it still comes down to NASCAR's judgment. But you're never going to have a perfect system. And I'd much rather err on the side that when people do things to break the rules, you really need to come down hard on them. Not what you did with Gibbs Racing, but what you did with, like, McDowell, with Keselowski. And by the way, the 43 and the 42 car, that was a kind of a slap on the wrist. So, yeah, the whole idea that, yeah, teams make mistakes, it could happen. But these are multi-million-dollar teams. They believe me. Have you seen any of these race shops? They look like fucking operating rooms. You could eat off the floor. They're not going to overlook things like that. When you catch something on a car, it was there on purpose. Okay, so I hope that makes things clear on how I feel about it. Okay, different levels of penalties versus one for everybody. Okay, so that this is pretty much along the same lines. Um, yeah, I don't like this L1, L2, L. What designates the difference between uh, the 42 and the 43 messing with the rocker box, which is a part, an approved part from NASCAR? They're not supposed to mess with it in any way. So whatever it was they did to mess with it, what's the difference between that and what Keselowski did, or what McDowell did, which was mess around with the seams of the car? It's like it just makes things confusing, and it just gives NASCAR way too many chances to mess up and make mistakes or just have bad judgment because everything's open to interpretation. Does anyone really trust NASCAR's judgment? I don't. So it's better to just have a blanket policy. First of all, NASCAR spent a lot of time and they were extremely focused on telling all the teams, do not mess with these cars. These teams are not stupid. They know what they're doing. They know what they can and can't do. So once you catch them doing something to the car, it does not matter to me. I'm not focused on the level of egregiousness to something someone did. To me, I'm more focused on the intent. What was the intent? You messed with something because you wanted to create an advantage. That's what we don't want. We don't want that. That's cheating. So I don't care what you did. You got busted doing something you know damn well you weren't supposed to do. That's it. You get hit with the same penalty that someone else gets hit with across the board. I mean, they keep talking about how tough these penalties are going to be, and they have been tough to Keselowski and McDowell. But the 42, 43, the 35 owners points, and look, for running where they are, it's a big hit for them. But again, I'm not focused on where these people are running. It's the overall stance by NASCAR. You got caught messing with something. We told you not to do this. And look at all the people getting caught fucking around with the car. You know, the only positive thing I could say is that NASCAR is busting people. It's not a perfect system. They can't check every car. You know, I hate to break it to people. And you're not going to catch everything on pre-race. And, you know, but they are catching a lot of people. So that is something positive. But what do you do when you catch people doing what you said not to do? You're giving slaps on the wrist to some guys and you're coming down, rightfully so, much harder on other people. I want a blanket. I don't care who it is. You got to come down with the hammer on everyone. What they did with the Gibbs cars is a joke. That should be a massive scandal. And this idea that people keep pushing, like, oh, you know, that's a big deal that they took the win away. No, it's only a big deal because they used to let these guys keep the win. And now they're finally taking it back. You're not supposed to let them keep something they didn't earn. So it's not a penalty in my eyes. Um, all right. And one last thing. Who's to blame? Driver's image. Okay. Another thing people have brought up, and it's a really good point, right? Uh, a lot of people are trying to make excuses for specific drivers and saying, hey, they're not the ones making these decisions. They're not the ones working on the car. They're totally innocent. So you could look at it two ways in my book. I'm not going to go along with people that just say, hey, these guys are completely innocent. They have nothing to do with it. You should leave them alone. That is off the table for me. But what I will say is, yeah, I could probably say, you know what? They're just there to drive the car. They want the best car possible. They don't want to see, they're not looking. You really think that these guys don't know what's going on at the race shop? They don't know exactly what's going on, but they know people are looking for an edge. They're not fucking shocked. They're not surprised. I haven't seen one driver ever stand up and say something, which brings me to something else. But this is a team sport. And yeah, a lot of guys who aren't doing anything wrong are going to get caught up in it. But that's what being a team is. You're going to get credit when you do good things, and you're going to get some of the blame when things go bad. Even if it was just a car chief or engineer or the crew chief making these decisions, it makes everyone look bad. Everyone's hands are dirty. So when it comes to the driver, I'm sorry. I don't separate the driver. And I'm going to tell you another big thing. When you look at these cars, the first and for some people, the only thing you see is the driver. So you look at the 11 and the 18. What is your thought in your mind when you see that car? Do you think of the car chief or the engineer back at the shop? Do you think of Joe Gibbs? Do you think of the crew chiefs or the people in the pit crews? No, you're thinking of Denny Hamlin and Kyle Busch. And the same goes for every car in the entire field. When you see a car and you see that number, you think of one thing. You think of the driver. And that's why I hold these guys to a higher level of responsibility. Because if I'm a driver and we get caught as an organization cheating, that makes me look bad too. What do you think fans say? They're going to say, oh, Hamlin and Bush, these guys are cheaters. McDowell, look at McDowell. To me, up to this point, that was the best story of the year. And I'm not a fan of McDowell. I'm a Trackhouse guy. I'm a Daniel Suarez guy. Uh, and that's a big story, like I said in my other video. But if I have to vote, what's the most biggest uh, story in NASCAR? It would have been McDowell because consistently, week after week, he was fighting in the top 10 most of the time. That's a big deal for a small team that's always been a lower tier team. And every week they're in the mix. I saw him fighting off Kyle Larson at one point. And I'm like, wow, this is fucking cool, right? So people watching at home, these are good, feel good stories for NASCAR. And it gets marred because they got caught cheating, doing things they shouldn't do. So at least they got hit properly. 100 owner points, 100 driver points, 4 race suspension for the crew chief plus $100,000 fine. That's a sizable hit. That's a sizable hit. Okay? So the penalty is appropriate, but that should be the same for everyone. But there you go. And you look at the driver and people look at them and say, cheater. Oh, you only were doing this because you were cheating. Now, McDowell's great season, all right, a career year for him, it's down the toilet because now people are going to say that's why he was running so well. And it's a legitimate thing to say. Whose fault is that? That's their fault as an organization. So I'm sorry. I don't separate the drivers. Now, I will concede. I don't think they're going and telling people, I don't care what you do to the car, cheat. I need more speed. I don't think they do that. I just think they complain. They want a better car. Everybody does. But it just makes it worse that it's one of the top organizations. These super teams with all this money and resources, and you got to stoop to cheating. You know, I could almost understand these lower tier teams that are struggling, who are desperate to just get a fucking top 20. And I'm not saying it's okay. And if they get caught, drop the hammer. But what I'm saying is, I could almost understand the thought behind it. This is Gibbs Racing. It just makes it worse for me. Don't don't tell me they're not capable of working on the car and just working and finding, those little areas that other people are apparently finding ways. But yeah, that's pretty much my thoughts. I picked out a few things that people did bring up. I hope that it clarifies some things for you guys, or at least my view of those things. I'm curious to know if you agree with some of this stuff, especially the penalty to Hamlin and Bush. And I really don't see much of a penalty at all. The most I could say is, yeah, they got last place points, which is to me the same thing that would happen if you got a DNF. No suspensions for anyone. And it was early when NASCAR announced, we're kind of done. I think, we're good here. So yeah, it makes NASCAR look terrible. Um, I don't like all this fucking. It's all judgment calls. No, man. You bust somebody doing something they're not supposed to do to the car, you drop the hammer. And you drop it the same fucking hammer on everybody. And you don't differentiate. And you don't say, well, this was kind of manipulating something where this guy was actually doing this to this unapproved part. And, you know, it's all cheating. They're doing it on purpose. And they know they're not supposed to do it. I don't know what more you need. So those are my thoughts. I thought, I didn't think I would talk more about it, but there's a lot more going on. And like I said, the more I think about it, it just gets worse because, yeah, taking the win away and all that, that's supposed to happen. That's not a penalty. That's not a penalty. You stole it. You didn't deserve it to begin with. And Hamlin whining about the purse money? Are you serious? Something else you stole. You didn't deserve it. And you're whining on social media about, how much money you lost. The purse money. These people are fucking out of their minds. Where's the sense of awareness? Does he have a publicist? Because if I was his publicist, I would tell him, shut the fuck up. Because everything you say, it just makes things worse. You just come across as uh, an entitled twit lacking any sense of awareness. So, yeah, I look forward to your comments later.